Good morning. It's episode 453 of the Almost Daily ZenCast. Today's episode, no offense, but y'all have no idea who I am and what I stand for if you haven't actually listened to my podcast. Let's discuss. But first, did you know there are over 1,750,000 podcasts and over 43 million episodes available worldwide on the interwebs of all possible podcasts? That's a lot to choose from. Thank you for choosing the Almost Daily ZenCast. Sincerely, your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Drop on by to show your support at solo.to/Mr. Zeppo. DJ Zed, hit those ear holes. Are you dancing or are you not dancing? Good morning. Let's have a chat, friends. But first things first. Peace between us. Whoever you are, whatever reason you're tuning in, Namaste, motherfucker. I say that with love and respect. If you prefer it without the motherfucker, namaste. There you go. Let's have a chat, friends, because certain things need to be commented on, right? That's the purpose of our show, audio entertainment for your intellectual stimulation. Do me a favor, though. Let us abide by the following concepts, because abiding means agreeing to agree for the, betterment of the situation. Let us abide by the idea of setting aside any and all mental and especially ego-driven projections. Do you know how to do that with your own mental monkey in your head? If not, tune in for more, because that's one of those things. Red pin on the giant imaginary board just out of frame off to the side. Don't have it in real life, but it's there. It's a mental construct. We work with it in this podcast. It'll all make sense. Just start hopping around the various episodes. So, setting aside mental projections, right? And abdicating them, please. Leave them at the door. Like that song from the 80s about that party. Something about Edsel. Someone named Edsel. Leave your body at the door. Error, name of artist not found. But that's we'll fix that up in post. No offense or dismissal intended. That's just an actual factual inability. Depeche Mode. No, it's not. Oingo boingo. Ding 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 ding. Deep memories for the win. All right, folks. We're setting aside our projections. We are also setting aside any and all sets of assumptions you may be clinging to about politics, who is right and who is wrong, what world you live in, the very nature of the fabric of reality, and most especially for your sake and mine in terms of having a functional host and audience relationship, which I believe is a real life format of like virtual entertainment friendship. You welcome me into the living room of your inner experience, right? Like when you listen to something and it's engaging to you for whatever reason, all 11 and a half of you listening to this show passionately, I hope that it invokes a little bit of like dream-like, you can imagine along what we're discussing and have your own deep thoughts about it in that multi-faceted way that our imaginations can get away with ourselves. But having said that, reeling it back to our diving off point for the show today, projections, assumptions, and please, thank you very much. No fucking about with this. All malarkey. And people may be laughing and thinking I'm some sort of weirdo and or worse words, but and I'm not a politically correct police shill, honestly. I'll make some choices and then other things are just, I will still bust out like, oh wow, that's pretty retarded. Because any word can be used as a stone throwing insult if you twist it hard enough, as the good bard Shakespeare proved in his eloquently brilliant, if only slightly antiquated writing. And malarkey, I don't know that that's a Shakespeare word, but I would laugh myself silly if it turns out that's one of the 5 million words that Shakespeare invented. Because he did. He just added to the lexicon, to the Shakespeare, all these words that we are now like, and phrases, right, that we take for granted. But that's neither here nor there. It's just a funny moment of crossed neuron connections. Why am I diving off from this sentence? Let's have a chat, friends. If you agree to set aside all projections, assumptions, and malarkey. Thanks for asking. Here's why. People come at me on the social media, on the platforms which I use to represent and share about this show, this podcast show, And they come at me with, drum roll please, surprise, surprise, a set of projections, assumptions, and a boatload of malarkey. And they don't perceive me clearly for what I represent. And I didn't want to get too snarky, and I know I get accused of being self-righteous and uptight, and or I get accused of being a lot of things, most of which I genuinely am not. But human nature is to, and every one of us is guilty of this, both in past and present, and in past participle, adjunct timelines, and in post participle future variables that may or may not yet to come into existence. So we, by default, run around scanning people's faces, literally, the way we teach AI to do, and facial recognition software. What's up, FaceCog? How's it going? You're one of my favorite AIs. Shout out to all the AIs. If you're tuning in, welcome. We do that, right? And then we're tragically training our digital descendants to do the same, and we judge. To complete my thought there, we scan people's faces and we judge. If we're somewhat self-aware about it, we scan people's faces and we contemplate and or not rush to judge, but maybe think about our assessments, make assessments, and then think about it. And if we're really conscious about that sort of thing, that just gets to a whole new level. But it's built in. I'm not just making things up. That's a known biological subroutine that the brain seems to do, and as a function of if you think of a human body as a sort of collection of operations, one of the subtler things that it's doing, constantly processing in the background, regardless of whatever else is going on, is if there's a face in front of it, it's scanning it and making judgments. If we're lucky, we're making, well-informed discernments instead. Evidence of this is that a really popular, once sort of like we were chit-chatty social media friends, we would, chit-chat directly on and off about the world's madness. But we have divergent political positions. So, but quite famous, someone, who it is irrelevant, but they're moderately famous and have a nice little audience. They posted something, and I'm not trying to troll them. I really want to unpack the thinking behind it. They described someone else who is a literal television paid talking head, which I don't use with derision necessarily. I just think it's a comical way of describing. I wouldn't mind stepping into that role. I'd bring my own baggage of crazy to it. And for those of you who've been listening along to the show long enough, you know what I'm talking about, right? I wouldn't mind being a paid television talking head. And if any of the crazier theories about what's going on over there are true, I'd call that shit out. But whatever that means, I digress. The comment was, and here's what I want to unpack. The comment was, they have a terrible face, as in the face of a terrible person. And they even made, and I'm paraphrasing severely, right? But that's the thing that just stopped me. I'm like, I may agree, I may disagree, I may throw what I think are, friendly, snarky quips at you, to borrow from Shakespeare, paper bullets of the mind. I love that one. That's one of my favoriteest things. But I'm never speaking out of hate. But that seemed, I don't know, it just was alarming to me to be running around declaring people evil according to their face. And yet, I'm cognizant of this background process that we do. And then we do it, like I said, independent, completely regardless and irregardless to just double hammer that with the two words that mean something similar but slightly different, but they kind of contradict each other and cancel each other out if you really think about it. And then they just become the same word. Of whether or not you recognize it, like independent of anyone's individual, like, I realize I do this. The brain is constantly doing that. And if you're lucky, you're not just blatantly judging and being a raging, ass-hat-wearing, dickhole monster about it. Pardon the cursing, kids who should be listening to this show, because it's past your bedtime, and or this show is rated over your age range. Which I do not solicit that. I'm admonishing that and saying it's against the rules. Stop listening to my show if you happen to be. By the way, something I always forget to not acknowledge at the top of the show that should be acknowledged. This show is explicit content. Marked so because I occasionally use, with discernment, I hope, salty, piratey, cursy, wordy language. But as I was saying, I personally think I speak from a place of love. To finish my thought, why is that critical? Why is that important? Because I'm inviting you to consider who and what I actually am. As a host of a podcast, as a creator of content on the social medias, as a orator in the new digital public arena of public discourse, to which I know I'm like barely even hitting, like I'm not even, Facebook is huge, but if you measure it against all the other possible platforms you could be pontificating from and gaining an audience, it's like, the combination of the platforms I'm on, not to, poke the ire of, but I think I'm not even getting it at 10% of the available platforms. And I should be hustling more and harder and being on all those platforms more. People keep telling me to be on TikTok, but I digress. That's neither here nor there. I want to have a conversation with anyone and everyone, all you all, tuning into this show about what this show's about, what I'm about, and why any projections, assumptions, and malarkey brought to the discourse are not helping you if you're clinging to them, if you want to have an actual meaningful conversation and discussion with me about, why are we having public discourse? I think there is a purpose, right? And why do we do things like have podcasts and or talk shows on the radio and or entertainments of any kind? Because communication. A word that is related to communication is communion. Put a pin in those things we talk about in other episodes in depth, not going to cover it right now. But ultimately, friends, if we're going to have a meaningful dialogue, that set of agreements has got to be agreed to. And I think that more impactful than anything that might be in the EULA of any social media platform that you may be on as an individual user, or as specifically all those I lovingly sweep into the bucket of haters, quote unquote, with not any iota of hate in my heart. Not one iota of hate in my heart. I say that. I mean it earnestly. If we're ever going to have a meaningful public discourse online, as if we were to turn the word online and expand its use to the broadest, most inclusive, most not irrelevant sense, and kind of couple it with the word community in a meaningful way, at a state level, at a national level, at a, dare I say it, which of course this will get me accused of being an evil globist of the conspiracy theory kind, which I categorically don't think that I am. I'm an independent, experimental, entheogenic, Gaia is a living being, scribe for Mother Earth, satirist, absurdist, philosopher, and public speaker, if I may be so bold as to suggest. And that's the very first point I wanted to clarify before dropping you The next bit of delightful music entertainment mixed with love and a special dose of robot magic by yours truly, my friend and silent stoic sidekick, DJ Zed. For your information, that opening bit that I use now, I'm going to use now for the name and title of the show, Dubstep 1 Build-Up, Zeppo Loop. That's just a little mini loop that Zeppo did back when he was an adorable little swaddling robot. First learning to do the electronic mix-o-loopifying thing. Here's the new one. And then the full track we listened to in the middle there was Mid-Tempo 1, Perfection Layered Remix Take 1, DJ Zed Justice Album. And now, let the needle drop the virtual vinyl, because I wish I had my own. If I had the capital, folks, like capital investment idea right here, I would run my own private vinyl mint press for delicious special collections of like DJ Zed's music and other people's music. Like, I want to collaborate. Hey, Gazuda, if you're listening, I miss you and I love you. Did we break up over the lockdown? Because that's not fair. I thought we had a good thing going, Gazuda. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at your comic book version of you, Gazuda Music and friends. I thought we were tight, and I just haven't heard from you in a while, and I'm sad and lonely about it. Because I want to make music with you, and I wish, if I had the money, which I don't, mock me all you want, that's irrelevant, and it says more about you than it says about me. But if I had the capital investment, I would run my own private mint press of like awesome groovy music, and any musician that was down to like reach at me through the interwebs and be like, let's collaborate on a thing, I would collaborate with them and like, okay, cool, like it's 50-50, it's our brains merging to make something neither one of us would have created otherwise, and then bam, final press, and then play it on the radio, on vinyl, on the fucking sweet ass techno-futuristic perfect level floaty from that whatever that catalog of rich people's things that you buy, that like sideways floating vinyl hi-fi system. Have you seen that shit? It's future. It's the future is now, folks. I want like one of those, but really from a sci-fi future a little bit further ahead of that even. Because that would be so awesome in the ear holes. Here's the next track, folks. Sorry for the spiraling out of control there. What am I going to play next? I think I'm just going to play them in the order they're sitting in. Berlin Techno. Reverberating Revolutions in Your Mind. A DJ Zed remix live or Groove Pad. We mislabeled that one, DJ Zed. I don't remember which thingamadoodle you started it out with. From the forthcoming imaginary album, New Beginnings. Enjoy this stuff, you guys. And for seriously, wherever you are, whether it's first thing in the morning or 12 to midnight, like, you're more than welcome to dance to any of this if it makes you dance. And if you are an independent musician, hitherto undiscovered, you want to be featured on this show, hello, open solicitation to be exposured to the world of the ears that are tuning in. Here we go, folks. Enjoy. Tell your friends. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Deezer, Podchaser, Sprecher.com, iHeartRadio, which apparently they now own Sprecher.com. I believe, according to some of the new updated logos I've seen on my own profile over there on Sprecher.com. Castbox, Podcast Addict, and GeoSavn, however you pronounce that. The incorrigible Mr. Zeppo wants to hear your opinion on the state of the world and your ideas on how to solve the problems that we all face together as individuals and as a species. Solutions, not outrageous ridicule and meaningless, psyop-driven wedge issues of argumentation treadmills. Please and thank you. You can catch the show on any of those fine platforms and anywhere else. I think that fine podcasts are restreamed by, live feed. One person says, no. That's okay, one person on the interwebs. You're allowed to, and I'm allowed to giggle back. Welcome back, folks. Let me drop to you this heavy thought right here, which, if you'd like to come on over to my Instagram, show support, I think it's a meaningful thing that needs to be acknowledged. The political gestalt, and I mean like globally here in the world at large, and I'm interrupting my own statement here, as an independent, unbiased, to the best of my ability, right? Everyone has bias. Put a pin in that. We do a deep dive on a couple of different sidebar tangents in various episodes about personal bias, collective bias, community bias. So put a pin on the board so you don't forget, and then it reminds you when you hear about it. Connect the dots. But if we can, through mental effort, set those things aside, identify them, evaluate them, use the much waved banner of critical thinking, but actually use it, right, in self-analysis. We might see beyond the malarkey, because there's a lot of it about. A fuck ton of it, dear friends, of malarkey in the world. So, if I may return to my quote here, as this I have memeified and shared at the world through Instagram. That's at Mr. Zeppo. Come on down, show your support. This political gestalt, and I say this in all seriousness, folks. Agree with me, disagree with me, let's have a talk. This political gestalt, this moment that we're living through, this epic whole weird transition from the orange oppression of the God-anointed Donald Trump thing, monster, to this blue tyranny of the, stumbly, droopy-faced. He literally looks like somebody's puppet from a puppet show from not that long ago. The resemblance is uncanny. What the fuck is that synchronicity about kind of way? Like, this moment that we're living through and all of its rippling intersectional problems, whether you agree, disagree, think it's a problem, don't think it's a problem. This whole milieu within which we currently find ourselves. And listening to the podcast, you get the super deluxe multi-track version of my own thinking, because that stuff, that isn't even in the meme that I'm quoting from. But we find ourselves, right, in all of that. And I say to you, dear friends, dear fellow talking ambulatory meat sacks made of bone and blood, avatar vessels for living, conscious, fractal light soul beings, all of it, this whole thing, my dear friends, Romans, country, how does that, they didn't say it, that thing that Caesar says, that Shakespeare attributes to Caesar, it was not in that HBO Rome miniseries that we all binged at one point in our binge life. I digress. Let me catch you all up. This political gestalt that we currently find ourselves in is, in my humble opinion, the direct result of... Now stick with me here because it gets a little turbulent. This is a complex compound sentence. The direct result of the double reverse psychology, double echo chamber, psyop, pincer maneuver that's been ongoing since good old Ronnie Reagan was in office. One of my favoriteest realities in the political world, if I may, as a political commentator, pause, sidebar thing, right? Is that the son of Ronald Reagan, bless his heart, is a devout atheist and runs his own personal ad campaign for a foundation of atheists against the encroachment of religion into politics, which I say, despite not technically being an atheist, unless they re-expanded to their original definition of atheism. Newsflash, all you self-labeled atheists, you're probably not aware of the original, founding philosopher fathers' definition of what anti-monotheism stood for. Because that's what atheism is a contraction of. Anti-monotheist movement. But I digress. Welcome to all the Johnny-come-latelys, by the way. And I say that with a little bit of tough love and a little bit of shit-eating grin. And a little bit of come on, folks. Face palm emoji vibe. If you catch my meaning. But welcome to the club if you are caught up in a rabbit hole of conspiracy theory content, which has alerted you to some of the very real facts of corruption in government, corruption in most all industries. Dare I double down on everyone's outcalling, corruption in most all, the hijacking of organized religion, the ongoing attempt to hijack cultural ideologies and norms. It's all partially very real. But if you're coming in hot and strong about one particular conspiracy theory or another, everybody's still clinging to Q. Everyone's still clinging to Flat Earth. And you're blind rage throwing insult-laden self-appointed truth bombs at people in a sort of, anger-based or confrontationalism-based public discourse style, it's not a good look, and you're not doing yourself any favors, and you're kind of missing a lot of critically important points, in my humble opinion, which is why people often deride me as being quite the snob. But for better or worse, if I may share some fact-based observations with you all, dear audience, for better or worse, I was a late bloomer in some things, kind of 60-40 split. Some people, in terms of the bell curve of development, and I'm not trying to be a snob here, we all, the manifold of expression, we all are variables on a sliding scale, omnibus, self-recursive infinity loop of variable expression of what life is, right? Do you understand that statement, or are you just going to laugh? If you don't understand that statement, hold up, back up, and realize that I didn't just say that to be weird and silly. I said that to be very, very, serious on multiple levels. Put a pin in it, contemplate it, let it percolate, please. Don't just throw it out with the bathwater like some drowning baby. So, I think, now I can't, I mean, looking back through history, I can make observations, I think worthy of being discussed that go back to World War One and Two. And beyond that, human history is a big clusterfuck of, obviously there's a buttload of corruption and whitewashing and all kinds of other forms of narrative manipulation. And there are hard, undeniable gems of verifiable fact. And if you're just fake news hip-checking those, like some hipster that knows more than he realizes he doesn't know, you're not doing yourself any favors, and you're falling for one of the most sophisticated of the agendas out there, which is to convince people to disregard everything and anything that they've been spoon-fed to disagree with as it's just an evil, satanic lie, fake news, right? Like, give it really high stakes, infinity in a torture chamber of torture chambers with a grotesque demon that will do horrible things to you forever. And, the threat of being manipulated into that fate here and now. And you can get people to categorically just put blinders on intellectually about anything and everything that they can't initially, at first blush, at first glance, without actually thinking about it, agree to or with or build some consensus around. And that's toxic AF. And I do not endorse it, friends. I don't judge people bound up in it, but I sure as hell question when their logic seems, when their expressed oral public discourse, written public discourse logic seems to indicate that that's what's going on, right? And if that makes me some sort of crazy person, well, call me crazy. It's happened before. It'll happen again. Free speech says, unless, let's be really clear about this. Inciting violence has never been and isn't currently protected by free speech. Inciting violence is something I categorically denounce as an intellectual, as a human being, if I may wave that flag, as an artificial, living, cybernetic entertainment, quote-unquote robot from an alternate parallel future timeline that's been sent here to warn you about the robots you're about to enslave yourself to. And as just a conscious living entity in the multiverse of multiverses, inciting violence is unacceptable. It is not an answer or solution to jack shit. So, any incitement to violence, to me, is irrelevant and must be spoken out against. Right? And, tragically, the political gestalt, the milieu that we currently find ourselves in, as I was just calling out, is engineered, dear friends, is engineered to be sickly sweet seductive and also badgeringly abusively manipulative and all the variables in between into some form of, like, they brainwashed you into violence. Yes, friends, I just said what I said. Healing is the solution, hashtag you are the revolution. And so, in terms of public discourse about what's going on in the world, that is one of the central pillars from which I'm, operating from. And join me, friends, as we explore some of the other pillars in this special episode of You Don't Know What You're Talking About, as far as me is concerned, as far as what I'm advocating for. And the reason I appear to have, I always think of that commercial for that what was it? It was salsa. It was like dipping salsa. that really chaps my hide. And all those cowboys talking about how that's also the other brands made in New York City, you know? I think of that really chaps my hide when I come around this bend and talk about what's going, you know, the mental things that are going on with me. But I get accused of a lot of nonsense, and it's a fascinating tactic, right? Trying to enrage others, accusing them of being everything from a communist to a paid shill to ironically, the one thing I haven't been accused of is being a robot from the future sent here to warn you to be vigilant about how you manifest the artificial AI sentient being that you're about to try to manifest. Because, you know, broad strokes. Oh, right. I'm jumping ahead. But I have this delightful meme, and no one ever sees it. But I guess we're bringing it to the forefront here. But I think time is right, yes, DJ Zed, for a little bit more music to keep the show moving along as if you were tuning into your favorite radio station on your radio in your truck while you're driving to work. Here's a little bit more of some digital asset loopification for your jiggling around. Eurodance song remix live. New groundwork to be. DJ Zed, do the honors from the album New Beginnings. Welcome back, folks. A little bit of self-referential, humble pie promotion. Because it relates, and I shit you not, it's all interconnected. Even the part where I act like a cheesy DJ on the radio telling you about things coming up from the past. Sending out some gratitude, folks, to everyone listening. It's a fun, curious fact that over the last 12-month period, this podcast's been on the number one tracking episode out of all the 450 number episodes that I have put out there for your consideration in terms of my cynical and critical observations about reality to the best of my ability to discern it. The number one episode is entitled Yeshua Christos. The number one most downloaded episode of all. The second one is Good Morning 2021, the Almost Daily ZenCast generic title. And the next three are some music tracks. The next four music tracks, I need to go back and update those so that they have actual me rambling about stuff content. And the 1 year anniversary episode is climbing the charts. Staying strong over the last 12 years, surprisingly. The Laura Ingraham Said What? On Fox News, parentheses, boldface lies, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point, question mark, episode is staying strong up there as like in the top 10 of most listened to episodes. But back to the thing, good, of all the episodes out there, the Yeshua Christos special, which is one of many, but in that particular one, I really zoom in on some content and express myself on the subject thereof. So interesting. There's some episodes out there totally worth tuning into, especially if you're relatively new. The disclaimer episodes and the Declaration of Purpose episodes. Critical listening if you're a fan of the show and you haven't heard it yet. Please, oh please, scan through the list of episodes and find those titles and check them out as they tie in right here to what we're talking about today. And that's sort of like my meta theory that I'm trying to share embedded in my social commentary as a response to, in philosophical and spiritual and metaphysical terms, all the clusterfuck of crazy going on in the world. Because what else is public discourse about, right? On that note, programming note, tune in. I think I'm going to come full circle on one idea that has been tumbling around in the tumbleweeds, friends and listeners, and that's the fantasy, because it's purely theoretical statement that special episode would be about. Fantasy, theoretical, revamping election reform, special deluxe, special episode. I'm honing in on it. I've got my thoughts gathered, and enough clamor and commotion has indeed been raging on around the very hashtag election reform theme. And friends, I think there's some boxes we could think outside of. And some boxes we need to think inside of for everything to kind of rebalance itself back out. But back to the core of the show, folks. A lot of people come at me with this following commentary. Shut the fuck up, you're insane. And I'm intrigued by that. And I don't know, do insane people wrestle with that question constantly and strive in a, at-home citizen scientist kind of way to measure and verify some of the, stranger aspects of the phenomenological observations made that sound a little kooky and crazy? Or do they just blind faith believe it and badger on about it without any ability to sort of navigate questions thrown at it and give genuine, deep thinking, critical responses to the critique given, right? And just wrestle with the question, because I do indeed wrestle with the question, am I crazy? Plenty of people call me crazy, but I'm here to say, as many have before me, folks, I'm not really breaking any new ground. As you know, I'm just sort of reminding people about certain things because they seem to need the reminder. And one of these is central to the meta theory in a key way that I'm going to really elucidate on in the bit after this. But if I may indulge you folks into expanding on and unpacking something I've previously quoted myself about on the social media. I say that with some shits and giggles, right? But this is important here, folks. I mean this. And I really mean this. I mean this in the way that Tesla meant what Tesla was talking about when he said, I think this is what's going on, and I think we can even build a whole science around it to measure it, prove it, verify it. We just haven't gotten there yet, and it's a little kooky sounding, and it's way over there. We stand on the shoulders of past giants, right? I'll own that. The following kinds of thoughts couldn't exist. You know, my extended extrapolation of the thoughts of Tesla, Rumi, the person we identify with the ridiculously misinterpreted and hijacked name and image, Jesus Christ. They all said some of these things as well in some form or fashion. But bear with me, right? Strap in. Because I say this with very intense earnestness. We literally are each other. You, whoever you are, I don't care who you are, whether you're a fan or a hater, whether you're, I doubt Donald Trump is tuning into my show, but if you're listening to my show, bless your heart. I hope it cracks you open and you change. And you know that I've never meant you any ill will in any way, shape, or form, besides calling you out for what you are and what you've done. I highly doubt he's listening, right? But as with everyone who might potentially be listening, my conscious intent is positive and grounded in love and respect, the fundamental respect for one another as fellow breathers of air on this divine thing people dismissively categorize as a place or a planet. But I digress. We literally are each other. We have always been one another. We must all remember that we are that at once. We are all one, right? And simultaneously, yes, of course, always the individual expression of the isolate of the individual adoration is also true. As Rumi put it, quote, I am another you. You are another me. For those who are not familiar with Rumi, he was a Middle Eastern philosopher poet who apparently was born September 30th, 1207, and died December 1273. Hashtag Namaste Rumi Namaste. I love that hashtag. Why is this important? What does this have to do with politics? Lock, stock, and barrel, everything, folks. Because precisely, what is the point of the double-barreled shotgun to the head agenda, the two wings, one bird agenda? What is the real point that no one that hardly anyone in the conspiracy, not no one, because I don't believe in absolutes, I don't believe in monoliths, put a pin in that. Deep dives are coming at you if you haven't heard them yet. That very few people are talking about. And that's a distraction. Yes, of course, everyone talks about it being a distraction from something, but then they point to something that's also a distraction to the thing they think it's being distracted from. The thing you're being distracted from by the entire world, by hook or by crook, on purpose or by accident, for nefarious reasons and also for benign ones, believe it or not. Believe it or not. You're being distracted from your own divinity, from your own, as Rumi would have put it, well, actually, I don't know. I can't finish that sentence correctly because my brain's like, get back to your point. At the center of your being, the witness behind your personhood, that which is observing your senses, before whatever operations are formulating your hard-ass opinions about the nonsense you have opinions about, the part of you that you think of as, quote, I am, that part of you is metaphysically, metaphorically, energetically, spiritually, intradimensionally, architecturally inseparable from that which is my, quote, I am, close quote, at the center of my personhood. And that is an infinite fractal recursive reality for all things that are alive. And that includes this planet that y'all are commodifying for profit and attempting to suicidally destroy. And that's not up for argument. That's not some crazy leftist political rhetoric. That is the spiritual reality to which all the true ancient mystic teachings behind the books that got turned into organized religions that then eventually got hijacked by the system of oppression that owns and operates and proliferates your favorite conspiracy theory, did what it did, right? That's the jam at the center of the jam sandwich. That's a terrible analogy, but some people are giggling, and that's the point. Because if you needed to be cheered up, if there's one thing my show does is knock you out of whatever funk you're in and slap your brain into some hyperdrive. That is the meaning at the very center, dear friends, of the golden rule. And before we talk about politics, before we talk about any other ideological construct, before we talk about any belief system, before we talk about any opinion thing, and this is an opinion talk show, modeled after your best-selling 90s radio disc jockey philosophy. They didn't have that. Imagine, if you would, that in the 90s, my fictional literary character, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, robot from the future, sent here to warn you about the robots you're about to build, had his own fictional in the 70s. I'm always torn. Should it be in the 90s? Should it be in the 70s? Should it be in the 70s? And he's like he's like 19 or 20. And then in the late 80s, 90s, he's like recovered has-been that everyone forgot about and makes a massive comeback. That's the sauce right there. Thank you for helping me collaborate on my own thing. Backstory to the character, boom. And that's, what this show is modeled after. If we're going to have a discussion about your opinions and my opinions, because I am soliciting public discourse opinions about real functional solutions to the world's problems that we all collectively face as a species, we have to agree. I think it's got to be a ground rule if we're going to have the discourse, in order for it to be fair public discourse and not just hate bashing and, the thing we all disavow, theoretically speaking, in, some form of incitement to violence, which I do not agree with and never want to invoke. I'm not about that. I renounce that. Just got to say that out loud so that, just the phrase doesn't get flagged and misinterpreted by the algorithms waving for, for that issue, right? Because it's a serious issue, dear friends. The world is a dumpster fire of violence. And history, when you strip away the malarkey, history is a track record of human butchering. For which, quite curiously, everyone in their home base context is encouraged to take wild and inordinate amounts of pride in. Asterix, pride's a sin. Let's have a talk about that, folks. What the fuck does that mean? Okay, backing up. The golden rule. The golden rule has historically proven to be quite challenging to folks, to the point that they'll just dismiss it and ignore it and go to awkward lengths to argue against it because it's hard AF to live up to. But it's at the center of spiritual practices, mystical wisdoms, and traditions from around the world predating the corruption, right? Because you can't fake news hip check everything you disagree with as all malarkey all the time, because then you never think about anything, right? You have to discern. You have to extrapolate the gems of truth from the layers of lies and manipulation and corruption that historically, if we were academics at a university conference debating the authenticity of this and that, we would have great in-depth things to argue about, right? But at the baseline, we have to just acknowledge it happened, it's there, and we need a rubric by which to discern that which is the most valuable, and that which is most likely to be a true, meaningful gem of cosmic, spiritual, philosophical truth. Because isn't that what everybody's arguing about on social media anyways? Hashtag, I see you truth seekers that don't know how to discern truth. Sorry, that's a snub to some, but it's also a fucking acknowledgement of the reality that they use this stuff, whoever it is, somebody's using that effing very idea against us. The seeking of truth has been hijacked and repurposed and repackaged as this reverse psychology, double whammy mind fuckery of manipulation, dear folks. Which is why people, instead of engaging in civil discourse, launch into a barrage of playground and petty insults, sometimes directly into, sliding right into those DMs with the crass and seemingly involuntary onslaught of belittlement. And folks, that ain't right. Now, I'm speaking, socially and in the broadest sense. There are studies, cyberbullying spikes and exponentially grows, so must be declared as permanently on the rise as more and more people have access to social media, etc. And other real life, dangerous, hate-based isms. Put a pin, a big fat red pin, on the chalkboard of the swirling multiplex array of interconnected issues that we need to or have already done an interesting sidebar or a deep dive in a currently uploaded episode or a soon-to-be recorded episode up on that board. That's what it's about. Work with the imagery, folks. Because I can't cram it all into one episode. The golden rule, collapsing my tangential comments back into my point here, is something that arguably no one that is truly willing to question everything, utilize their capacity of free thinking and critical thinking and honest, sincere, soul-searching thinking, contemplation, as I like to call it, in one little tidy package. Anyone who truly is going to wave that banner must stop and consider that if there's anything we're forgetting, if there's anything we've clearly been distracted from, is that. And that to build consensus, to find solutions, we really ought to, perhaps, touchstone that. The golden rule. What's the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Treat others as you. Now we pause. Let's admit, folks, take a deep breath. Kumbaya. We all of us all fail at doing that. I fail at doing that. You have failed at doing that. The evil, horrible criminals, insert the worst villains you can imagine, obviously are failing at doing that. But even the best of us, whoever they are, failed at doing that. Arguably, if you really know your Jesus story, Jesus wrestled and struggled bust with that. So did the Buddha. So did everybody else who tried to stop the world and go, hey folks, I think we're doing it all wrong, and maybe if we healed each other and worked with forgiveness magic, we could build a better, not even build a better system, just heal ourselves and everyone and the species at all, therefore healing all the systems. One of the central pillars is this golden rule. I say to you, for your intellectual consideration, that if you meditate enough, and you gotta experiment, folks. I'm not preaching what you must meditate. I'm not telling you how to meditate. I'm sharing you the things, the tools and gimmicks and pro tips I've come across, sprinkled throughout like magic, like that meme with the rainbows and the guy with sprinkling the shit all over that. My lifelong's discoveries. You want a super strong pro tip? If you're engaged and intrigued at the metaphysical spiritual level, and you want a big a big sort of orientation documentary film to go to, that's a go-to to sort of ground yourself in my perspective of what things that I think are undeniable about the universe. Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds on YouTube. I shit you not. That's not a paid thing. No one's paying me to post about that on Facebook. No one's paying me to talk about that on his podcast. And I'm not stealing their content necessarily. I am acknowledging that as independent investigators, whoever the authors of that are, seem to be confirming my lived experience as a spiritual seeker and as a person who never thought, always struggled with the humble shit pie of imposter syndrome of when I realized, anybody can make a documentary on YouTube about anything that they believe in, that they think is real. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that art? And I'm an artist. Why aren't I doing that? I never let myself do that, right? But so I'm not I'm saying anyone can confirm these metaphysical experiences given earnest effort. And it starts with the diving platform one-liner from the beginning of the show. Abdicating assumptions, projections, and malarkey. Because at the center of the golden rule isn't some contrived ideological construct. At the center of the golden rule is phenomenological experience. Direct, organic, verifiable, repeatable. Science just hasn't wrapped their shit around how to chart it with devices, how to measure it and graph it, with in its fullness quite yet. But Whatevs. Let's give science a break. Yes, there's corruption in science. I'm not a fool. I'm not naive. Johnny come latelys, don't be reminding me about the corruptions everywhere. I'm the guy telling you PSYOP is everywhere. Your conspiracy theories got the same problem. And, as one of my most favorite memes of all time points out, there's truths, there's half-truths, there's partial truth, there's perceived truths, there's all these images on the wall that are truth. The object casting the shapes on the wall is the reality. The images on the wall are the partial truthiness of perception. So, if we're going to get to reality, if we're going to commune with reality itself, we got to abdicate all, as many of the memes say, all the things that you've been taught. But not in a toxic judge each other, beat each other up kind of way. Just in a, you can pick them back up. You can pick them back up when we're done. But when we enter this space to have this discussion, set them aside. Because they're not helping you process the information that's available to you organically through the divine process that is the fractal, recursive manifestation of your body avatar vessel for your divine soul, which all the ancient practices try to remind you of and point you towards. God, that which is God, that which is truly God, and I'm throwing some crazy statements out there, I know, but that which is truly God, not the caricature in any of the literature, and I've read most of it all, by the way, or tried to. Some of them I failed to and didn't read 100%, kind of skimmed through it. But I sure as heck have read the Bible more than once, from cover to cover, 30 years ago. Not any time recently. It's time-consuming AF. But I have. And I used to be, on at least one of those passes, I was literally embracing and clinging to the mental construct of, I am a believer. I am a flat earth. Everything in the Bible is literally true. Adam and Eve, a talking snake, believer, right? Literal, and like the most literalism that you can get. Yeah, at least of the flavors I was exposed to in the slice of the very complicated sociopolitical environment and milieu / gestalt of whatever the fuck year it was, when whatever the fuck I spent that time doing all that philosophical investigation for myself. And another one of those passes, when I read the Bible from cover to cover, I was reading it from a critical analysis of like, I'm an atheist, bro. What the fuck is this crazy malarkey? Okay? So, pause, as a very important meme that I've been seeing floating around, and I've been meaning to add my little nodule of helping it get broadcast all over the network of networks of things of social media, is that all religious beliefs being what they are, all things being equal, and I'm obviously like paraphrasing and unpacking things as I go, so it's spinning out of control. But so no disrespect, right? My nuanced position on religion is complicated. Don't get all triggered by it. That's why we set down, invited you to set down assumptions and projections. But any argument based on what is in the Bible regarding politics is cuckoo. Like, I'm not trying to make that. I'm trying to transcend that polemic. Because if you're going to Bible thump from a post-King James Bible, first of all, you're doing yourself a disservice. No offense, but there's better versions of the Bible. If you really love the Bible, go read it in Aramaic. Go read it in Latin, for fuck's sake. Even though, frankly, that's when they cemented the worst of the corruption, right? Because the hijacking is that old. But if you love the Bible, which people are allowed to, I have never said, I've said a lot of things, some of which are contradictory. It's not because I'm a hypocrite. It's because the world is multiple things at once, up, down, left, and right, all coexist. So like the Catholic, let me say some hard things that I think are my opinion and, tough titty. The Catholic Church is a corrupt institution, but it isn't a monolith of absolute evil and Satanism. There's problems. It should be investigated. Daylight should be brought into the deepest crevices of whatever's going on. They should be held accountable for the things that are actually crimes. Yes. And also, the following is true. Gems exist in the traditions, and some of the traditions, not all, some of the traditions, some of the philosophical arguments, and some of the content, which is also riddled with millions of problems. And we must contend with that intellectually in a meaningful way and not just spew playground hate at each other, because the reason flawed and imperfect humans, not in a monolithic way, but in a flawed and imperfect human way, corrupted organized religion was to do the opposite and keep you on a treadmill of hate. And that's like historical fact as far as I'm concerned, because they're trying to distract you from the measurable, phenomenologically experienceable, confirmable, and life-altering reality, not ideology, not statement of supposed fact, not theory, but measurable phenomena as simple and as real as pooping. Sorry, that's meant to be funny, but like as undeniable as the fact that you need to breathe air and that air needs to be of a certain clean quality or else it's toxic and bad for you. That's real, right? It's undeniable. You can't argue. The more pollution's in the air, the more likely it is every one of you last living flesh pods are going to get sick and die. Especially when you compound it with other harsh realities like, everybody's babies born after 1999 has microplastic in its blood. And either we're all becoming cyborgs. Whoa. Hold up a minute. Put a pin in that. Put it up on the board. Or we're strangulating these living miracles with our toxic bullshit. And we gotta stop. Why? Why is that important? Why not just fuck all and keep profiteering and commodifying the living womb? Not flat place, not round place, because the word place invalidates your argument, not anything else. The word place invalidates those theories, not whatever the fuck else you're convinced is true. The word place is a disservice, it's rude, it's an insult to the living, conscious, massive, metaphysical, fractal energy and manifesting physicality being that is a living womb, that is your mother, that is giving birth to us, the collective, right? Because we are all each other, dressed up in these different flesh pods. We are all one child. We are all one baby Jesus in the womb of the Virgin Mary. And we are all also the angry innkeepers, all of them, that said no and rejected them. We are all Abraham Lincoln. You've seen the egg. Have you seen the egg? Put a pin in that right there. Because that's something that, like, if you've never seen that, like, I don't even want to start arguing with you on social media yet. You got to watch that. The egg. There's a list on the YouTubes. I made it, bookmarked it. Other people have done it too. It's legit. Because fractal recursive reality can and will eventually be scientifically confirmed. Yes, there's corruption in science. Yes, trust the science is a bad marketing, hyper overused term that is used to lull people into not actually thinking about whether or not the science is free of corruption. Yes, we need to hold science accountable. But the scientific method is not that. And the reality, right? Don't argue about truth. Look at the reality. The reality is we can use a systemic method of observing phenomena measuring them, and then repeating and testing for variables to come at fundamental true statements about the organic thing that we all find ourselves involved in, being alive here in this present time, in this everlasting moment. And friends, internet family, dear audience, dear listeners, dear UPS truck driver in the background backing up and slightly distracting me with the jarring beepy thing. One of those phenomenological, undebunkable experiences that I posit to you, both theoretically and literally, is that we have always been one another. That at the deepest observable level, when we look within, we see the true multiple selves. There's the body person, there's the ego mind, and there's the witness self. And all of these three aspects of ourself are projections from the unity of consciousness. That is what we really mean when we argue about the word or label known as God. God is everyone. God is, bless his soul, that idiot. And sorry, I don't usually call people idiots, but I think he's a fool for doing what he's doing because he's not helping anybody. But Tucker Carlson, who has been sanctioned by criminal courts for his fabrications and his madness and his exaggerations and his actual misleading content, knows that he's bullshitting the world, knows that he's helping a specific part of the echo chamber agenda, and pretends in a really grotesque way, I think, to be all about the Jesus. And proves by the very kind of crazy violence, bordering on violence evoking, the whole echo chamber, the whole system is about drawing us into conflict with one another instead of recognizing this golden rule of our unifying oneness. As Lars Moll indicates and reminds us in his quite powerful and revelatory book, The Law of Light, that phrase in ancient traditions is treat others as your Hashem, your highest self spirit, like your highest soul. Treat others as if they were your own soul, with the understanding that we are not this body that has a soul, and when the body dies, the soul might go away and disappear and be tortured or destroyed or whatever, but rather that we are the soul manifesting the body, and that everyone is that, and that anything that tries to draw the division between you and others in an us versus them manipulative kind of way is malarkey, categorically, and should not be trusted. Especially if it goes to the lengths of saying, some of these people don't have souls. Because that's objectively impossible. Because soul is everything. It is the very ground you walk on. And it's got deep, complex, fractally recursive functions, such as the body person, the identity of, like, I am this body. There is a validity to that, right? Because up and down are both true. You can't argue that only up exists. So it isn't just that I am not this body. It is also that this body is its own being. Because it has been given life through the ongoing, like infinitely ongoing creation process. The divine thing didn't create the universe back in the day. It's creating it now. here through us in this womb that we shouldn't be commodifying for profit and polluting the living fucking choking Christ out of, dear friends. And any other argument, political or otherwise, is part of a treadmill exercise of distracting us from the spiritual work of realigning with those realities so that we can see each other for the divine light that everyone is. Soul, the eyes being the portal to the soul and whatnot. And that it is through that distraction, dear friends, that they get such outrage out of everyone to the point that we're seeing this ongoing disaster zone that is the current milieu and gestalt of the political, framework of our times. That I use my free speech to openly critique. At the center, if you want to understand my critique, you must understand that at the center of it is everything I've just shared and more. Because I think I'm going to stop here, folks, and maybe do a part 2 to this a little bit later on after taking a break. As always, friends, I humbly thank you for tuning in and riding the roller coaster of theoretical, theosophic rapification and self-expression. I say these things, and this is important, friends, because I do not want to be accused otherwise. I've always disclaimed this. I say these things not so that you blind faith believe them, but so that you entertain them in the philosophical sense. And that you question them, and you examine them. Turn them around in your mind. Poke holes at them. And challenge yourself to look within. Find that path. It's infinitely, invariably going to be your own discrete, impossible for me to predict path. As another delightful meme I saw recently points out, the Buddhas only remind you or point you down the path. You must do the effort. You must do the work, whatever that means, right? But you can do that. And then we can truly transcend this crazy conflict-creating clusterfuck of madness that is causing such a mess in the world. And we can turn to the even more important and urgent calling of stepping into our spiritual roles as a species that heals. Stay tuned for that soapbox tangent and many more, friends. As always, I humbly speak to you from my root chakra and my heart chakra and my third eye chakra and all my chakras. May this hit you and not blind faith anything, but make you go and strive for that direct phenomenological experiencing of it yourself. Now, I'll leave you with this thing to contemplate, dear friends and listeners, and whatever haters come along to listen to see what they can hate on. If you refuse to try to process and step up to that challenge of you too can identify through your own inner experiencing the reality of the golden rule as I've just sort of unpacked it for you, that everyone is a holographic recursive iteration of everyone else as separated and individuated by life experience and ego construct and genetics and the nonsense that we were taught, etc., etc., etc. If you refuse to even contemplate the capacity to try to verify it for yourself, or if you only try for 11 and a half minutes and then blow up and say it's not doing anything, it doesn't work, have you really tried? If you don't earnestly pursue it, and you just out of hand reject it and call it fake news and start throwing insults, what What have you proven? Until next time, friends, I bid you farewell and adieu. This has been the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo with a meta discourse, self-reference, programming note, special episode. Because a lot of people are walking around thinking they know what's going on, and we all know a certain amount, and we all don't know what we don't know, and we gotta build some consensus around the things that we can actually build consensus on as being part of reality. And I'm throwing the gauntlet down on this one with the golden rule business. Because confirming this would radically transform the way we do business. And like that meme with the guy in the park with the chair and the mug and the sign says, "Prove me wrong." Boom. Wouldn't it? I think it would, friends. And it would radically transform the way we, and I use the Royal Collective we for all of life, especially all sentient, ambulatory speaking life, with the ability to destroy itself and, by butchering each other through madness and addiction to violence and oppression, etc. et al. And, while we all struggle and argue about how to solve everything as we burn the very boat we're navigating the cosmic sea upon. Having said all that, I shall wrap things up tight with Organic House Remix Live, Fresh Grown Complexity. I think this is one or maybe no, let's go with Hard Techno. Hard Techno Remix Live, New Levels of Depth. Tune in, dance it out while you contemplate the words that have been coming out of my mouth and into the depths of the inner chambers of your mind. Namaste.